Hello, viewers. Today I want to talk about false start in Zimbabwe. It's quite a long topic, so I may not be able to finish it within one shooting. So I'll discuss it in phases. Today I want to talk about phase one, which is the land issue. I am talking about the land issue because it is a burning issue in Zimbabwe today. But the land issue should not be looked at in isolation. It is a result of the Lancaster House Constitution, a result of the Lancaster House Agreement, an agreement which was signed by Robert Mugabe of ZANU, Joshua Nkomo of ZAPU, Abel Mzorewa of UANC, Chief Chirau and Chief Ndiweni, and the British government. And we all hailed the Lancaster House Agreement on the 18th of April, 1980 at Rufaro Stadium. It was indeed the thing that ushered us into independence. We did not ask ourselves, what independence? When Lancaster House had produced the willing seller, willing buyer of our land, the land for which had united us to fight a bitter war. It was only one man who objected to the willing seller, willing buyer kind of an arrangement, and that was Chief Rekai Tangwena, who questioned who was selling the land and who was buying the land. And those questions were not answered at all. It even took Robert Mugabe 20 years to institute land reform. But even then, he was forced by the Liberation War veterans who began to question why they had fought the war, if not for the land. But even then, the land reform entailed parceling out the land to the few political elites. And the land will be utilized according to the same way that the white commercial farmers had done. There was the issue of compensation for farm improvements. Without really going into details of what those farm improvements were, whether the farm improvements were done through the private income of the commercial farmer and not from the profits that he derived from the land. Even if it meant looking at the house, those houses were built out of farm bricks which were actually made by the farm laborers. And by the way, if any compensation at all, it should have been to the thousands and thousands of farm laborers who had offered slave labor for decades and decades. Slave labor which enormously enriched the white commercial farmer. If any compensation at all, that should have been to those farm laborers. You talk of dams as if each farm had a dam. No. There were dams scattered here and there. And these commercial farmers pooled resources to build those dams. But those were resources that they got from the profits from the land. So you cannot talk of anything belonging to the farmer, to the white commercial farmer, that was worth compensating for. No. He had commodified the land that he had to fence his piece of land to effectively make sure that they had commodified the land. That was not the way Africans viewed the land. The land, according to African culture, was never to be commodified. You could not fence a piece of land and say, this is mine. No. So, when you question the compensation of the white commercial farmer, you should question the Lancaster House Agreement. Sanctions are imposed because of the Lancaster House Agreement. And all these things are being done in order to make sure that sanctions are lifted. But sanctions are not going to be lifted because the British, the Americans, and the Europeans are bitter about taking away property from the white commercial farmers. You don't take away property from a white man. That is an abomination. So unless we take back all that land to the white commercial farmer, there is no government in Zimbabwe that is going to get the sanctions lifted. we have committed an abomination insofar as the Europeans and the Americans are concerned, and we need to be punished. Because they also realize that we are very much dependent on them. They've realized that they have colonized us, they have colonized our minds in such a way that we don't believe we can do things for ourselves. We don't believe we can beat the sanctions like what the Rhodesians did. I have said before that the Rhodesians had much more stringent sanctions than what we are experiencing now. But until 1980, the Rhodesians enjoyed the highest standard of living in the world. It is because they knew they could do things for themselves. They did not have to rely on another nation. But with us, unless the British does something for us, unless the Americans do something for us, unless the Europeans do something for us, and unless the Chinese do something for us, unless the Russians do something for us, there is nothing that we can do for ourselves. So today it is the American and European sanctions. Tomorrow it may be the Chinese sanctions. Because any government that comes into power and it does not sing to the language of the Chinese are also going to impose sanctions on Zimbabwe. And again, we'll find ourselves suffering. Because most of our resources are now in the hands of China. I have again and again emphasized that technology is not a monopoly of one nation or a group of nations. Zimbabweans can master the modern technology to such an extent that in few years to come, Zimbabwe can be like Japan. But that's only if we are able to change the mindset of our people, to decolonize the Zimbabweans, to make them understand that the destiny of Zimbabwe is in their own hands, not in the hands of foreigners, not in the hands of foreign domestic investment, not in the hands of re-engagement and engagement, but that we are our own liberators. Once we resort to that kind of mindset, then Zimbabweans will be united towards one goal to make our country great, to work hard for ourselves, to make ourselves great, to make ourselves be counted amongst the committee of nations, instead of relying on other people for our own survival. Again, this is the voice in the wilderness, but the voice of true revolution. I will see you again in my next video. Thank you.